feels like it's been years.
It's been how long? 4 or 5 weeks, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe even 6 or 7 weeks.
Maybe 8.
6, 7.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Do you not hear that much in Germany then?
No. People. I mean, Zoomers do it. I don't know many Zoomers, but I did meet one, and he was like, "Ja, klingt gut. 6, 7. Ja, das ist was wir sagen. 6, 7."
What does that mean?
Like, that's what we say.
All right, very good. Now, how much research have you done on this topic for this week?
Not a gigantic amount.
Okay.
Like a teeny tiny bit.
Yeah.
But not very much. How about you?
Well, probably the same, to be honest. But I found a few interesting things, interesting subtopics.
Wouldn't it be funny if we found the same things?
It's probably quite likely we found the same things. Because we're talking about political systems, right?
Yes. That is what we're talking about today.
So we're not talking politics. We're talking politics.
Exactly. How politics is done,
yes.
Not politics.
Yes.
Although isn't everything politics? We've been talking about politics this whole time, especially in the first episode.
I mean, it's very hard to escape a link to politics, really. Yeah, because you don't have, obviously, flags. That's very political. Vices, lots of politics governs that, laws and policy, whatever. Yeah, so yeah, you're right. It's very hard to escape politics, I suppose.
Yes. And as each day goes past and all the things that are happening in America, I find it very difficult not to link everything to politics. I'll try my hardest not to polarize the audience, the gigantic audience that we have. But
I mean,
that might also...
Just saying the word America, you've already got political now.
Yep, that was my aim.
But actually, I mean, maybe America's a good place to start, because let's ignore politics in the way of like political opinion, or whether you agree with Trump or whatever else. But let's just explore the American political system right now, because it's, as we've talked about before, America likes to think that they're like the most free country, they're like the greatest country on earth, we're God's own country. But like the workings of America is actually, when you look at it in detail, is very backward in some ways.
Yes, 100%. And I don't know how to phrase this in a way that is non-partisan, but it is a system that is directly enabling a literal fascist fucking dictatorship to have taken root, which we're currently seeing.
Again, political again.
I'm kidding. I mean, well, I'm not kidding. It is true. But it has been that way for a long time, and it does feel like it's engineered in such a way that it must be that way. The Electoral College is an insane system that wouldn't fly in most European countries, although, to be honest, I think the UK system is quite similar. I think the UK system is also extremely poor and set up in a similar way to the American system. It's nowhere near as bad, but it does ensure that you effectively have a two-party race, and you have no chance of getting out from under that. Yeah, I don't know whether that was what you were going to go into with the Electoral College.
Yeah, well,
but what did you have in mind?
Yeah, because I think a lot of the time people in the UK do forget about not how necessarily like unfair things are, but just the way that there's no perfect system, obviously, and like the system we've chosen has several flaws that are actually quite similar to America in the way that the popular vote doesn't always win. Or or popular voting doesn't always output the same representation as the number of people that voted for that thing. So, I mean, we've seen it recently with the UK election where Labour won the election, but they received fewer votes than they did in the last election where they lost.
Yeah, I mean, with the case of the UK, I think it's easier to talk about the UK just because we're from there, and we can recall better examples of this, but this is really shocking if you really think about it. The reason that Labour won, which is ostensibly the sort of left of the UK, or whatever that means really nowadays, the reason they won is because the country moved to the right.
Yeah.
Because when Corbyn received 13 million votes, or whatever it was, there was quite a a sort of a movement towards social democracy or democratic socialism. I always forget which one he was. But now that we've got this rise of the right post-Brexit, with Reform coming up quite strong, the right-wing vote was split between the Conservatives and the Reforms, and that's why Labour won. They didn't win because people wanted them in power. It's awful. It's a completely backward system.
Now, the thing is, like, if there was engineering on Labour's side, to split the right, I'm not sure how much of it was, sort of a natural thing, but it's perfect divide and conquer, or divide and rule. Is how armies have basically like taken over places quite easily, where it's like they pitch everyone else against each other, and then not because they're the strongest, it's just that everyone else has become weaker. But I think you can compare it to the Electoral College, because I think Trump's first administration, when he won in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. But again, it's because it goes through Electoral College. The votes themselves don't necessarily they don't have their full weight. It's all done by these intricate little systems.
So that there's two things with this. For a start, when you as a person in a state vote for the president, you are not really voting for the president. You're voting to give a suggestion to your electoral college representative in that state to vote for the president. I don't know if it's ever actually happened in American history, but a representative of the electoral college in the state could go, oh, my people have voted for the Democrats, but fuck that. I want to vote for the Republicans. They could do that. And I mean...
Is there anything stopping them? Is there some kind of...
No.
It's just like an unwritten rule that they probably should vote in that direction. I mean, I think that's where the UK might have the edge, because in the UK, I mean, for anyone that isn't that familiar, you don't vote for the Prime Minister necessarily. The only people that actually vote for the Prime Minister are people that live in the Prime Minister's constituency, assuming that Prime Minister then goes on to actually win to get voted in. But what people do is they vote for their local representative. Like straight away, there'll be 5 or 6 parties in a constituency, and whichever one of those parties wins, and they're obviously all headed by a candidate for parliament, if they win in that place, their party leader hopefully wins their constituency. Usually it's in quite a safe seat, and then it's not even the case where the party with the most votes or the most representatives gets to form a government even, is it? Because if you don't pass the threshold of, what is it now, is it 350 members of parliament?
I couldn't tell you, but it sounds about right, yeah.
How is it? It says 650 members of parliament, isn't there? So it's basically half of that. So what, 325? Yeah, unless you pass that, actually, you don't get to automatically form a government, but you could form a minority government.
I didn't know that. I thought you had to form a coalition if you're in that position.
I think the way it works is, if you're the largest party, but you haven't got the majority in parliament, you essentially, like, the king still invites you to form a government. That's where the power of the monarchy sort of still exists, where it's still a formality really, but like the monarch invites the leader of the party to form a government. And actually, they could do that for a minority government, but then the danger is then that government will be outvoted in Parliament on pretty much everything. So it's not in your interest to do it unless you actually have a majority. And that's why we get the coalitions and things.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I think the way that it works in the UK, in some ways, is worse than the way that it works in the US. Because what it essentially is, you can call it electoral college, call it whatever you want, but it's first past the post. The UK and the US, they both have this first past the post system. If you have 2 parties, which is what the US basically does have, it has a bunch of others, but no one ever votes for them. They receive literally 0 votes. It's you can round those votes down to nothing. It's a 2-party race. First past the post only works when there's 2 parties. In the UK, we have, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,000 parties? I don't know. The only other country in Europe that has first past the post?
Oh, I don't know. Go on.
Belarus.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
It's worse in the UK because we've got all those parties. You get ridiculous situations where, and I don't want to become political in the way that I'm necessarily espousing support or condemnation of any particular party, but if you just look at the raw numbers, the Reform Party in the latest election got a shit ton of votes. It must have been more than 1 million, was it?
Yeah, I know one of them. It was about 10% of the vote.
Yeah, something like that. They did not get 10% of the seats.
No,
And
no.
As much as I may dislike Reform, and UKIP before Reform, they were in a similar situation. I think they got 1 seat after receiving millions of votes. That simply isn't fair. It's a complete... Because the whole point about voting is that the people are trying to tell the government how they should be represented. And if a system doesn't allow that to happen, then it's a really poor system. I mean, compare it to in Germany, they've also got lots of parties. If a particular party gets 5% of the popular vote, then they will receive seats no matter what. And if I, living in Munich, vote for a particular party, like a small party, my vote will absolutely go towards the final tally to how many seats that party gets. Even if here in Munich the CSU wins, the Christian Socialist Union, it doesn't matter because I as a person have voted for that party. That is how it should work if you've got lots of little parties.
I think it's probably going to be a better system. I suppose the only downside there is, like, do you then distribute local representation accurately? Is there a way to do that?
Oh, you mean like the constituencies where people live?
Yes, I mean, let's say there was like 1% of the vote in each, what do you call it, like constituencies, in Germany, let's say.
Yeah, sure.
If there's 1% of the vote in each one of them, and that was enough to get that person or that party, a seat or two in the... What is it, the Reichstag? Is it still the Reichstag?
I think it is.
Maybe they've changed the name now. But, if they have a few seats, but then where do those people have like a home? Do they have a home seat?
Yeah, good point. I don't actually know. I don't know how it works. I have a feeling that it might not work that way, like the way that it does in the UK, but that's something that we're going to have to do a post research on because I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's a case, because, in the UK you have, your local MP, and they're supposed to obviously represent a party, but also represent the local area. And they, you can go to your MP and say, we think the bins aren't being collected enough or whatever. It's a tragedy. Like, you fucking take it to the Prime Minister, what can we do about it? And they'll stand up in Parliament to say, the people in my constituency of Northampton, like, they're tired of bins not being collected. And then, like, everyone will basically just say, like, yeah, thank you, okay, like, we'll get to that at some point. I mean, I don't know, do we need that local representation? Because we've also got the council. That's a very different matter. You elect the councillors separately. And in fact, the big story last year was that Reform won most of the council seats. They've got very little representation in Parliament, but actually the councils, the local councils, they had thousands of members. Well, not literally, about 600 members, up and down the country.
It wouldn't surprise me. And honestly speaking, I don't think that there's so few people in the UK who, when they vote in a general election, are thinking, I really want bin day to be on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. And I really hope that, this guy can stand up in Parliament and say, oh, the Right Honourable Lord Gentleman from North Tiddlywink, he has found that bin day should be on Thursday, whereas I think, Lord Speaker, like, no one is thinking about that at all. They're thinking, I want the Prime Minister to be this person or this person.
Yeah.
I want the blue team to win or I want the red team to win.
You vote by colour. I really much doubt there's anyone that's like, I've been a lifelong Labour supporter, but the guy that's standing for Labour in my county is a fucking dick, so I'm gonna vote blue instead.
Exactly. Yeah. There's exactly as you said. No one who's like a sort of typical Labour supporter, especially in the north, is going to think, oh, this Conservative guy who's running for MP in my council, he's going to do something really good for, Sheffield. I can guarantee it's like maybe 12 people in a city of 1 million have ever had that thought go through their head.
And that's probably where you get like independent candidates. They do quite well, with that sort of rhetoric, because again, independents will never have the party backing, but voting for an independent is, I think it'd be very foolish to do it in a way that's like, this guy could be Prime Minister, but it's more like, actually, we think this guy's going to be the best for our constituency. But then you've got to have very specific aims to do that, I think. Well, what kind of things did you find on your research then? Because I've got a little bit of research. We'll see if anything matches up.
Well, the main one was that the only other country that uses first past the post in Europe is Belarus.
Hang on, let me guess. Is it Belarus?
Yeah.
Oh. I've done well.
I also tried to look into what is the best form of government.
Okay.
And it's an unanswerable question. But I think that's what makes it quite interesting. I thought you might say that. We've had this conversation before. The thing is, it's an unanswerable question because you have to define what a good country is. And again, I don't want to offend anyone or espouse any particular opinion, but like I'm trying to steel man the arguments that people might make here. But some people think, for instance, that having better road infrastructure so that they can drive their car better and having fewer taxes so that they can save more money is more important than, say, education and quality of living. I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad opinion. It's just some people believe that. So if you had the Scandinavian model, for instance, there's some people who think that those are bad countries. And there's some people who think that the UK is better than Norway, for instance. So it's difficult to quantify what type of government is best for making a good country. I think the only way you can quantify it is to like look at the list that we were looking at in the last episode, the like Freedom Index or the Standard of Living Index. But I don't know. What do you think is the best way of quantifying it?
I don't know. I get your point totally, and actually that's when it comes down to not just like party values, but country values. So, you know, we have a big thing that we teach in schools is like British values, and there's 5 main ones, and one of which is individual freedoms, then it's democracy, you know, core British value. Most Western countries, I mean, most countries in the world, I imagine would, you know, project those values. Whether they actually happen or not is a different thing. But like, I think maybe in the future, hundreds of years down the line, when things become, I don't know, a little less, because I think the big rhetoric right now is things like nationalism in certain countries, but the move to like globalization, maybe we can have some kind of society whereby you don't necessarily have to vote for a party if you want their ideals. All you have to do is just move to a different country and experience those ideals. So you...
Well, yeah, I mean that's the dream.
So let me try and quantify this. So like, let's say the Scandinavian model you were saying. So what do they prioritize in Scandinavia?
They have high taxes and they prioritize social welfare.
Is that
stuff like that.
Is that regardless of which party's in charge?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't looked into in that much detail.
I mean, let's say then that, you know, for argument's sake, that in Scandinavia, no matter who's in charge, it's always going to be the case where there's high taxes, but, you know, really good value of public services and things like that. So if you agree with that model, all right, you don't have to worry about voting in your own country. You say, right, I want to go and live over there. And let's say, you know, obviously this probably would have been the case under the EU and the Schengen Agreement and stuff, you know, but in the future, it's like, yeah, you can just go and move there. You know, you're exchanging. It's like a one in, one out system. You know, you go and move there. Mm-hmm. There's people in Scandinavia that don't like the high taxes. They want more personal freedom and stuff. So they'll go to, I don't know, Spain or Portugal, because over there it's like low taxes, but not as good public services or, you know, whatever else. But people might prefer that. So you just, I'll go there, you go there, you know, and now you live in where you want to live. You don't have to worry about voting anymore. You're just in the place where you're I mean, that's obviously.
Well,
but you know what I mean? It's like that could be like a good system.
Yeah, it could be. I can see some problems with it though. I mean, for a start, some people, not me, but maybe you, correct me if I'm wrong, some people have pride for their country. And even if it's a complete shithole, like say for instance there was a country of 350 million people that is the most powerful and rich country in the world. There's a lot of people who live there who have pride in it, have pride in the flag of their heritage, but they hate living there because it's horrible and a dystopia. I'm not thinking of any particular country when I'm saying that stuff, but you know, it's America. I couldn't tell if you could.
Stop getting political. We're here to talk about politics. We're not getting political.
A lot of people who are Americans, they want to stay in America, even though they hate it, because they're Americans. And they would think, you know, moving to Portugal, for instance, they don't want to live in Portugal. They want to live in America. I am not one of those people. I just decided one day, basically, fuck the UK. I hate it here. Germany, that'll do. And I went there, but I'm not a German. And but I know what you mean. Like it, and the EU is kind of set up that way. That is how the EU works right now. There's lots of people that I meet when I'm out in Munich who are from Spain and France and Italy, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I wanted to come to Germany because I prefer the way things work here." And, you know, for this reason, this reason, this reason. And in Italy, there's lots of Germans who move there because it's sunny. And the trains work. But yeah, it's a great system. You're right. Yeah, and we decided to leave it. Why?
Well, I
Why?
mean, because there was 52% of people that wanted to. There you go. That's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose like the very baseline to this whole thing is political systems are so different around the world because there is no perfect one. And I mean, you asked me earlier, sort of, what do you think would be the perfect thing or the best fit? I said it's dictatorship as a joke, sort of. Now let me try and clarify. Actually, I did read very recently that like apparently a large percentage of what would you call them, Zoomers, Gen A, like sort of teenagers at the moment, would go for a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Now,
Wouldn't surprise me.
have you seen Subway Takes?
No.
You might be quite interested actually. So basically, like this guy just like sits on a train. I assume they're sort of like random guests.
Oh no, I have seen this. He has like a little microphone, and he
He puts it on the
interviews people.
ticket.
Yes, yeah, I've seen it.
So there was one guy who said he thinks that he was an American guy. They're in New York, I think. He said instead of electing presidents, what we should have is like a random lottery of certain people, and it's like right now it's your turn to be president for like a year or something, And the main guy said, 100% disagree. And he said, well, why? Why did you disagree with that? And he said, well, the whole point about voting, the whole part about a political system is that you make sure that idiots don't get put in charge. And then they were like, yeah. So like, how's that worked out? And in a way, it's right. It's, everyone who votes for a party that does not win an election is not represented. So there's always going to be some people who are not represented by their party. And, the whole idea of, and again, you'll never be able to guarantee this, but like a benign dictator, I suppose is appealing in some ways because it leaves no one misrepresented. It's like if no one is represented, then really everyone's represented.
I mean, I've heard this before. I've heard, not in this Subway Takes thing, but I've heard this idea before that there should be a lottery. It's a terrible idea, but it's no less terrible than democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to make it clear. I do believe in democracy. I think it's the best system.
Yes, and can I join that caveat and say yes? Obviously, I do as well. But it's interesting to sort of talk about alternatives, and just explore and see like their feasibility.
Well, you said it might be interesting or good to have a benign dictator, but what about a benevolent dictator? Surely that would be the ultimate. If you could guarantee that, there would be no system better, surely.
Yeah, so as in like a benign would imply that they're sort of just
they do nothing.
Like a non-entity. Yeah, benevolent. Yeah, that's probably what I mean then. Benevolent dictator.
Which is, it's kind of like communism. In theory, great idea, but how could you possibly guarantee that the dictator would be benevolent?
Yeah.
I actually did look this up because the only example I've ever heard of this being the case is Singapore. And then I thought, wait, is this a myth? That people say Singapore is a benevolent dictatorship. It's kind of a myth. It's a half myth. It basically is the only example in the world of essentially they do have representative democracy in Singapore. They do have multiple parties, but it is de facto. Wait, which one is basically like de facto or de jure? Which is the one that means
de facto means
like,
it is. It's like the reality. Yeah, the reality de facto. Yeah.
Yeah, so de facto, there is one party in charge in Singapore. I couldn't find all the details of why that is, but essentially, like they are just always in power, but people love them. People want them to be in power, and they do a good job.
Yeah.
The risk is, how could you possibly ensure that is how it would go if you always had a dictatorship?
Yeah, no, what is it? Yeah, and I suppose that's like the main downside, isn't it? I mean, have you studied Julius Caesar at all?
Not really, no.
We mentioned him last time, didn't we? Like with the whole purple clothing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interest because he was the OG dictator. In fact, dictator is a Roman term; it's a Latin word. So remember, this is before the days of the empire, so the republic was still in effect. Julius Caesar was the last real sort of like leader of the republic era. There were leaders sort of like after him, because it got very messy after that. You had like the triumvirate, Antony and Octavian and whoever else. But he was one of the consuls. So in the Republic, he had two consuls who were essentially at the highest office, and they would rule together for 1 year. And they had the Senate underneath them and stuff, But what the consuls said sort of went really. But they were elected by the Senate, I think. So it was all, there's lots of democracy sort of webs here and there. The consuls could like veto each other if they weren't happy with what, you know, the direction and stuff. But Julius Caesar was a consul. And then after he won the Civil War, he was dictator. Now, the whole point about this, one of the reasons, again, why he was eventually assassinated and things, like they thought he was getting too powerful. Dictatorship was only in place for 6 months by law. But Julius Caesar just sort of like ignored that. And it's sort of like he just like extended the period of dictatorship. It was supposed to be like emergency powers, you know, and he extended it, and eventually he was made dictator for life and just, ruled as dictator until his death. But the thing is, everyone fucking loved him. Like, the people loved him. The army loved him. Like, he was like the greatest general at the time, you know, he was like a war hero. Rome was prosperous under him, you know. So actually it was like, everyone's like, well, you know, I don't really mind. You know, he's doing a great job. Like, everyone likes him. It was just the Senate, really, that were like, not sure about this. Stab, stab, stab.
I was going to say Brutus didn't like him.
Well, I mean, you know about, like, so Brutus was essentially almost like a son to Julius Caesar.
I didn't know that, no.
They were really close, and that's obviously why the Shakespeare thing was like et tu Brute, you know, like even you.
Yeah.
So he placed democracy above, you know, family. Not literally family, but, you know, he placed democracy above friendship, which I suppose we all should do if you were in that sort of scenario.
Good guy.
But afterwards, it was like, everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, what's just happened? Like, why have you done this? And then obviously things trundle on from there, and you know, there's various bits of fighting and stuff, and then all of Caesar's allies took out all of Caesar's enemies, basically. But then it ended up with Octavian becoming emperor, Augustus. And then it really was, like, not called dictator anymore. You're something entirely different. You're the emperor. And yeah, you had like the systems underneath, the Senate and all this sort of stuff, but it was very much like a puppet government sort of thing. It's like what the emperor said went. So in the Roman times, it went from kingdom, and they was like, no, we don't want kings anymore. Let's make a republic. And then it went essentially, in all but name, back to a kingdom again, because the emperor would then nominate either family members or very close political allies to succeed them, you know. And again, I was doing a bit of background reading on this because we're studying it at school, and essentially, like, where underneath the emperors, the voting rights still existed. Like, the plebeians, like the ordinary population, they could vote on stuff, but it just became so unimportant. Like, the emperor would just sort of like just do what they wanted to do, really. And they had voting as like, oh yeah, don't worry, like, we're still a democracy, but it wasn't really. This is where the phrase like bread and circuses sort of came in. Have you heard bread and circuses before?
I haven't heard of that, no.
So essentially, it's the idea that, like, we can do what we want to do, and the population will be okay with whatever we do as long as we give them bread and circuses, give them food, and give them entertainment. So, like the film Gladiator, you know, like when Commodus returns to Rome, and he's like, you know, we're going to do 150 days of games, you know, and it's like, 150 days of games, excellent, you know, don't really care who's in charge as long as you get games, and, you know, they'd have like free grain, free bread and stuff. And actually, would you trade? I actually pose this to my pupils as well. So, like, you know, as a little thought experiment, would you sacrifice your voting rights if you were basically given free stuff? In today's world, it'd be like, you know, you get vouchers for food and stuff, you get subscriptions to Netflix for free, or like concert tickets, but you have to give up your voting rights. What would you do?
I would not do it. I can see why a child would want to do it, to be honest. Oh, I get to stay up past my bedtime. Oh, I get free chocolate. Yay. Like, children don't know what they want.
Yeah.
They think they know what they want, but...
That's an interesting concept. Like, when you're a child, you're ruled by dictators, essentially, which is like a family. Unless you're from one of these, like, ridiculous fucking new age families where it's like a democracy, and it's like, what time would you like to go to bed?
Yeah, he's fucking blue-haired, flower necklace wearing. Well, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, go on.
Do you think that the UK should become a republic?
No, I don't think so.
Why?
Because as far as politics goes, I think we could like reform the voting system, but I think having a monarchy does have certain, let's say, security features in place for the country. And again, I've talked to you about this before, whereby because we have a system where the head of state is not the head of government, it does provide a little bit of security, maybe, because, governments are appointed technically by invitation of the king or the queen, obviously, whoever's in charge. And I think I'm right in saying this, like, if it was the case where someone who was deemed, very dangerous or something, let's say we had like a new age Adolf Hitler, who was on the rise to power, the monarchy has the power to say, like, no, we're not actually going to have you forming a government, we're going to give it to this other person, which again is maybe undemocratic in certain ways, but again, de facto, it's like, what would people actually want?
Man, if only America had a king. Hat trick. That's the last time I want to mention them. I'm sorry. But yeah, you're right. It's
well, let's compare it to America, because there you've got the head of state is the head of government, and actually, unlike a lot of other countries which were run by presidencies, so like France, Ireland, are two examples I think of now, you have prime ministers that are head of government, but presidents who are head of state. And actually, that does work in a very similar way to the monarchy, where their role, as far as I'm aware, is more ceremonial than political.
Yeah.
And they do involve themselves in politics a little bit, but it's nowhere near to the same extent as the actual prime minister would be.
The thing is, though, this is a sword that cuts both ways. And this is precisely why I think the UK should move to a republic, or maybe have the monarchy a bit more of a ceremonial thing, because they do bring in tourism income, or at least people say that. There's no way of really proving whether it would go down or up if they became more ceremonial. But what if Wills is just a massive dick, and he's like, no, I don't want you to be my government. Don't want it. Like, you could just say that, and they would have to listen to him.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I think,
but
yeah, I get that, and actually, people often do say. People that especially disagree with the monarchy, they're like, oh, we don't want this like elite class of people, these like pompous, they've been raised in this way to like, inherit the country and stuff. And I get that totally. But then you can look at it from a different angle, whereby actually the fact that they have been raised in that way, the fact that they have that certain lifestyle, and I get really annoyed with people that say, "Oh, what do they do all day? They just sit in Buckingham Palace and do this." Like, they're actually they're one of the busiest people in the world. They're in fact, very few people I think could do that job. The constant duty of the office.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm reading Prince Harry's autobiography right now.
Okay.
I'm rereading it, and yeah, he's constantly doing stuff. Like inventing the Invictus Games, and he fought in Afghanistan as well, and but that's not because he was royal. But
no, but
there's stuff that he's doing,
But actually, it's talking about military involvement. Like, actually, there is a bit of an expectation for the royal family to do that. I think all members have fought somewhere. Even like Prince Andrew, like he fought in the Falklands War.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was
interesting. All right, yeah.
I think he was a pilot.
Okay, wow, yeah, I didn't know that.
Obviously, disgraced now. But still, But yeah, the people that say like, "Oh, they do nothing," so I don't agree with that at all. And actually, the fact that they have been raised a certain way actually prepares them for that thing, and I think it's a good thing that it has happened. And fine, if the royal family was just like some family from somewhere, then it's like, yeah, should they have that power? But because, like it or not, they've got great education, they've got all the trimmings of that life, where actually it's very unlikely you get a monarch. And again, they don't have a political agenda. If it was the case where they did, inform Parliament, they influence Parliament and stuff, then yeah, that might become dangerous. But they don't.
Well, but that's an interesting word to use, agenda, because a lot of people were worried that when Prince Charles became King Charles, His Majesty King Charles now, the third.
God save him.
A lot of people... God save him, of course. I don't have to say any of this shit. I don't even live there anymore. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know.
Yeah, British values, freedom of speech, it's fine.
Yeah, true. A lot of people were worried that when he got into power, he would have a bit of a political agenda, because he was always quite outspoken about things. Like, quite good things, mostly. Environmentalism and race issues, social justice stuff. Like, it wasn't like he was... saying horrible things like, get all the immigrants out, nah, that would have been worse. And thankfully he hasn't been He hasn't made any. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. He hasn't stormed into Parliament and demanded anything of the politicians. But the problem is that in a number of generations, someone will be king or queen who hasn't even been born yet. They might be mad. They might just be a crazy person, and no one would elect a crazy person.
Well, you're being ableist now.
What's the right word to use then? If not crazy, I can't keep up with the times. Someone who is neurodivergent to the point where they would cause damage. Let's say it that way. Am I wrong?
No,
George,
I get it.
Little George might have a child who's just mad, and he would just. We've had Mad Kings before, King George.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I suppose that it might be a flaw, but I suppose what you would have is maybe a regency rule where actually the main duties. But again, there's no duties that influence politics. But those ones would fall to a regent, a protector.
Except that, here's the thing, and again, it's this idea of agenda. No one in the royal family exercises any of this power, except for they did when Boris Johnson went to the Queen in the 2020s, whenever it was, and he was like, Your Majesty, could you possibly shut down Parliament? And she did, and only she could have done that, and. That was an example of I don't think that should have happened. I think a lot of people think that it was a good thing that happened, that Parliament was shut down, but I think it was a terrible thing. Yeah. I don't think we should have a monarchy that should be able to do that.
Would you prefer the Prime Minister does it by himself?
No, but he can't. I don't think it should be able to happen at all.
But, I mean, the thing is, you're trying to illustrate a point that actually I think you're arguing against yourself there, because the whole point about him asking permission to do that, the Queen could have said no. And I don't know too much about it, but I imagine she said, yeah, fine, we'll do it. Mm-hmm. Not on a whim, I would imagine. And, she probably took some persuading to have that happen. I mean, what was... I can't remember what the actual reason was at the time. Was it just after COVID?
I think it was...
It was before Brexit, wasn't it? It was he wanted to shut down Parliament so that they could get Brexit done properly or something.
Get Brexit done. Yeah. That's what it was about.
But let's not forget then, all the other workings of the country did their job as well, because they took it to the Supreme Court and they said, no, that's not legal. So then they had to reinstate Parliament.
Okay, but yeah, exactly. It wasn't legal. So the fact that she was able to do that,
but it wasn't,
and they listened to her.
No, it wasn't an act of the Queen's. It was an act of Boris Johnson. I don't think it's fair to put that on the monarchy and saying you allowed this to happen. The thing is, it's unprecedented. It's never really happened before, as far as I'm aware.
But I'm not saying the Queen one day just decided, "Ooh, I'm going to cause a bit of trouble." I don't think that's. I'm just saying that the vehicle in which it happened was through the monarchy. And that was the problem. You're right, that Boris Johnson just decided to do it himself, but he couldn't do it himself. He had to get the Queen to approve it. And I think that, like I said, that vehicle shouldn't be available to politicians.
No, well, okay, fine. Yeah. By the way, if you ever mock the Queen again in that way, I will fly to Munich and shove some jam sandwiches down your fucking throat until you choke.
I'm sorry. I love the Queen. I'm not disparaging the Queen at all. She was a lovely, lovely lady, I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, what's Germany got, eh? Actually, let's not talk about Germany's political history.
We've talked about Hitler in every
I was going to say,
episode we've done. So
might as well about him now, eh?
Yeah.
Again, elected representative, democratic.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time, and say to people in Germany, I know what's about to happen. Obviously, you can't prove it. So we have to get rid of this guy by any means necessary. That's undemocratic in a way.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And this is exactly the problem with fascism in general, is that it uses democracy as a tool to get into power. And you're right, it's a difficult one, because...
Do you know what it is? It's reverse gangsterism. And let me explain. So with fascism, or I mean, let's say authoritarianism. They use the systems of the law and government to attain power legally, and then once they have that power, they then do things that are illegal or make things legal that would have been and essentially be immoral or whatever else. So they use legal means to access illegal means. But with gangsterism, it's the other way around, because they start off by committing crimes, and once they've built up enough power and wealth, they then put that into legal things that will then actually carry on that money-making system.
I've never thought about that before, but you're absolutely right. That is exactly what it is. It's subverting the system to get through all of these checks and balances and things that are there to stop this kind of thing from happening. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I mean, I remember. This has happened, all over the world and stuff, But with the Peaky Blinders show, you ever see that?
I've seen the first episode. I'd like to get back to it though. I've heard it's really good.
It's alright. I watched the first few series, and I think I've sort of got bored after a while. But basically, in that, they start off with all this racketeering and whatever, illegal gambling and stuff. But then a few series in, the main character basically says look, we've got this operation going here now, and look, this is all legal. There's no need to launder money or anything. We have this empire that actually works in our favour. We haven't got to worry about breaking the law anymore because there's no law that we're breaking, and that's where they want to they want to almost elevate themselves to that class of people talk about class of criminals, don't they? Like in Sherlock, who's I'm just used to a better class of criminal, and yeah, they probably still are, but having that legal empire is much better than having the illegal one when you get to that sort of stage.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Breaking Bad is another example of that, but it's kind of the other way around in that. Close your ears, spoilers, people. Towards the end of the show, Walt makes so much money that Skylar says to him, "We have enough money here that with 20 car washes, we couldn't launder all of it in a lifetime.
Yeah.
You've got to stop now." And he's okay. But he doesn't actually want to stop because the reason wasn't money in the first place. The reason was that he liked it. He liked breaking the rules. He liked being a meth emperor. So that's a nice little subversion on that idea.
Yeah.
But you're right. Ostensibly, that I suppose that is the aim of the game, right? You've got to.
The thing is, I suppose making meth is it's quite hard to transfer that into legal things. Again, you could use capital to buy property and stuff, fine. But a lot of the gangsters, if they're doing in places or times when gambling was illegal, for instance, they put money into bookies and whatever else. Maybe then the law changes and actually those things become legal. And I was like, right, cool, we can do this legally now.
Which ties into what we were talking about in the last episode with drugs. If we, I don't think I actually mentioned this in my Henry's Big Three reasons that we should legalize all drugs. The fourth one is that you kill these black markets. These gangsters who are using it's the idea that if you can't get the police to enforce the rules of business, then you have to use violence to enforce it. And if you take away that illegality, if that's even a word, then you take away the need for violence.
Last orders.
I've just looked at some of the facts that I was looking at earlier, and do you understand how the European Union works?
Does anyone understand how the European Union works?
Well, there's a joke that I came across, and it's if you understand the EU, it wasn't explained properly.
That's great. Yeah. Do you?
No.
Would you say that you do?
No, not really. I mean, I'm just looking at a list of, so it has a commission, a council, a parliament, a court, a central bank, and multiple other overlapping competencies. It's one of those, it probably works really well because no one really understands how it works, and everything just sort of functions on its own. And it's something just little cogs in this massive machine. I suppose the only thing is if one of those cogs breaks down, it will just probably affect everything, won't it?
Yes. I mean, I think there's a CGP Grey video where he kind of goes into this a little bit, how many exceptions there are and how many rules that are sub-rules to other rules there are in the EU. And he shows a picture of the EU flag with the ring of stars. And for a split second, all the stars change into asterisks, right. Kind of hinting at the idea that they're it's just a big organization of this is true, except in this case, and read footnote number 97 for exceptions. It's extremely complicated.
Yeah.